Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for taking the time to tune in today. We are in or viewing the Careers in Law panel discussion and conversation. This was created for my fall 2022 classes, specifically in paralegal and legal studies. But I understand if you're in the humanities division and you're watching this, welcome. I'm Professor Courtney L. Gore. I have the pleasure of having some awesome people with me today who work in the legal profession in the DMV area, who have really generously provided their time, their attention, and also the opportunity to glean some information from their journeys. And so I'm really grateful. I want to take some time to introduce them. The objective of this panel discussion is to introduce students to careers in the legal profession. A lot of students have come to me and said, Professor, what can you be outside of an attorney? Or what can you be outside of being a judge, right? What exists outside of being a police officer, where there are so many different legal professions? And so that's one part of it. But the other part is to help students kind of discover the potential impact that legal professionals can have and have in their communities and the communities they serve. So that's the objective of today's panel. Now, most of you are tired of hearing my voice at this point in the semester. If you take my class, you know who I am. We've been talking, I get it. So I want to give you the opportunity to meet some awesome people who are listed here. So before I introduce their bios, I do want to say that it's not an extensive, right, description of everything that they do. The reality is we could be here for the full hour just talking about the great work that the panelists in this virtual room do. But I'm just going to give you some highlights and tidbits about who they are as a person and also as a professional, and then we'll hear from them throughout the panel discussion. So let's start with Ms. Saunders here. We have Ms. Saunders, who is a legal assistant. That's her current title. So Ms. Saunders recently graduated from Temple University with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Sociology and Communications and in Social Influence. During her undergraduate career, she was the president of the Temple University Public Advocacy Club, allowing her to put her passion for social justice into practice. Ms. Saunders sees immense value in language and is greatly interested in the power words hold. Her dream is to work in a space where she can harness the power of rhetoric to create meaningful social change. Currently, she works as a legal assistant at a family law firm in Maryland, and she's getting a real feel for the legal field as a whole. In her free time, Ms. Saunders enjoys spending time with her friends and family, playing with her dog, and watching low-quality reality TV. Ms. Saunders and I share that love and affinity. So, Ms. Saunders, I want to say thank you. I was not say me too. So, thank you, Ms. Saunders. And so, for students who are trying to navigate their way into the legal profession, Ms. Saunders is a really great resource here. Just tune in to hear about her experience going straight from undergrad or straight from her degree into just jumping into legal profession. So thank you and welcome, Ms. Saunders.
Thank you.
Of course. Next, we have Mr. Demetrius. So Mr. Demetrius is a senior law clerk and paralegal. Again, he does so much, but I'm going to give you just a brief synopsis on the work he's doing. So for more than 5 years, Mr. Demetrius has been a dedicated legal practitioner, often wearing multiple hats concurrently. And his experience is in the legal industry, of course, but it also includes government compliance, public defense, contracting, and much, much more. He received his bachelor's degree from American University, and that's right here in DC. And he also holds a master's in legal studies from the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. So during his free time, if you can imagine, he finds free time. He participates in local community events through the National Capital Area Paralegal Association. He is also, he has his own foundation, which maybe he'll talk about a little bit later, but his biggest commitment is to furthering corporate responsibility and acting as a voice for those without representation. So Mr. Demetrius, thank you so much for offering your time. And for those who are interested in joining associations and learning more about professional development, please make sure you tune in here. All right. And last but certainly not least, we have Miss Pinnock. She is a senior associate attorney. Okay, so she spent her entire career serving the community as a family lawyer. She is an experienced negotiator and also litigator who handles cases involving adoption, child custody, child support, divorce and separation, guardianship, spousal support, or some or alimony. They can be used interchangeably. I don't know if that's arguable. Property division, prenuptial agreements and postnuptial agreements, and the enforcement of court orders and agreements, both in the state of Maryland, but also in the District of Columbia. She has so many accolades to her professional name. Some of them include her being named top attorney for adoption in the Bethesda magazine. That was in 2021, just last year. She was also selected as a rising star for 2022 in Maryland Super Lawyers magazine and DC Super Lawyers magazine, and both in 2021 and 2022. She was selected for the National Black Lawyers Top 40 Under 40 list, which I am so happy for you. Congratulations. That is awesome. She herself is a graduate of the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law and received a bachelor's degree in family and human services from Towson University. So I want to thank you so much for being here and offering your time as well.
Thank you for
Of
having me.
course. Of course. What? Thank you. Okay, so panel. My class has sent lots of questions, so we're going to start with a round robin, and I'm just going to pick people to go first if that's okay. But the first question is very open-ended. It's a vocational question. What does a typical day in your life as a legal assistant or senior law, a paralegal, a law clerk, or associate attorney, what does that look like? And I'd like to go to Ms. Saunders, Mr. Demetrius, and then Ms. Pinnock in that order.
Okay, so each day, no day looks the same necessarily, but I generally begin the day looking at my emails, every single email that we get into our inbox that has to do with outward communication to a client or to opposing counsel has to be accounted for in our case management system. So I save all of those first just to make sure that I remember to do it. And then I start with whatever task I have first. For primarily, I feel like the three biggest things I would do is process documents, schedule appointments and meetings between attorneys and clients, attorneys and other attorneys, stuff like that. And I guess just doing like trial prep and other like stuff around that. Um, I spend a lot of my time like getting documents in from clients and then, saving them, processing, redacting, bating, all of that stuff, which can take a long time. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
things take longer than I
Mm-hmm.
expect them to, usually. But I just spend my time kind of like helping people as need be. So like today, I spent a lot of my time processing documents, indexing documents, and scheduling emails. But like last Wednesday, I helped another legal assistant get ready for a trial that was coming up today. And it just every day looks different. But yeah.
Yeah, and I could just about imagine that might be the answer for everyone in this virtual room or for any legal professional. But you all see that a legal assistant, their work is a lot more supportive, administrative, and clerical. So organization sounds like it's key in that role.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing, Mr. Demetrius, your day.
I could say the exact same thing that she just said, and it would all be true. I like to start my day by going in and replying to any emails because a million more emails come in. And I do like to start off that way so that we have a open dialogue with clients so that they know that we are in there and we are paying attention to them. And then I turn to my to-do list, which can include anything from responding to government inquiries, responding to court memorandums that need to be either reviewed or redacted. There are countless lists of things that could.
Mr. Demetrius, not to interrupt you, it seemed like your mic went out for 1 second. Do you mind repeating that last sentence one more time for me, right where you left off?
No, you're good. So, like I said, there are countless things that could uh, start my day, but it's usually all a Jessica has outlined. just like to do things in an order that ensures that the clients know that we are there and we are communicating with them, making sure that I'm communicating with my attorney and any other attorneys at the firm to make sure they know that we are present and we are readily available if they need us. And then doing things in an order that makes it efficient for me so that I know that all of my tasks can get done in that order.
Thank you for sharing. And Justin, you sharing your day or what your responsibilities entail, I just want to drink like a cup of coffee because because it's seen in your position, there's a lot more client interfacing, right? There's a lot more responding to clients. There's a little bit more of a focus on addressing inquiries from other entities that you work with. And so while, people like to mix up the legal assistant and paralegal role, they're very different, right? And so thank you for sharing. It also sounds like there's a little autonomy that you have in creating systems for your attorney and your work.
Thankfully. I've learned, if there's one thing that I've learned, it's that there's no one size fits all, and everybody coming into the legal profession has to learn how best to manage themselves, manage their caseload, and do what needs to be done so that the organizational goals can be met, but also not overload your process.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. It's very insightful. So we're gonna move then to Miss Pinnock. What? I keep calling you Pinnock and Pinnock. Wait, which is it? I'm so sorry.
Pinnock.
Pinnock. At class, I rarely call her by her last name, so this is the first for me. But what does a typical day look like for you?
It just depends. Just like everyone else has said, no 2 days are the same. I am not a morning person, so I usually start my day by having a cup of coffee, and then I'll look at the news for about 10 minutes to like settle myself in for the day. And then I will also respond to any emails that came through the night before. My system for that usually is that I'll respond. Anything that I can respond right away to, I'll do that. And if it needs like some work that I have to do, I'll leave it unread and then I'll go back. Then after I've read my emails, I have a task list called Asana with like due dates, stuff that I have to do. I look at Asana, see what's most important. So there's some things that it might be due today, but it's due today because I've given it that deadline. And then there are things that are due because the court says it's due. So like I will do that kind of work first. So it's a lot of like drafting motions. I'm talking to clients all day long. What else am I doing? I don't really research that much. I don't really look at the law in that way. I'll have the law clerks or paralegals usually do the research, and then I will read what they give me that's applicable to whatever the case is. Like right now, I'm working on a trial for Wednesday, and I'm trying to think about my day. And I read over like my law clerk's memo with the applicable law for that. I did a lot of trial prep today. So I drafted a direct examination. I drafted a closing. I'm working through a cross examination right now. You have lots of phone calls with opposing counsel. It's lovely if you get someone decent on the other side. And by that, I mean cordial. Like literally just as this started, I have this trial on Wednesday. I sent an email to the other side. Do you have time for a quick call tomorrow morning? And his response was, I'll see you in court on Wednesday. And it's like, okay, fine. It doesn't have to be like that. If I can say one message, everybody like, can I cuss? Can I say one cuss word? You don't have to be an asshole to be a lawyer. I don't know where that came from. I don't know why we think that that is necessary. I don't know what we think it's doing. It is certainly not helping either of the parties. It's not helping your relationship in the legal community. I don't understand it. I'll never understand it. It's totally unnecessary. It makes the job harder for everybody. It makes your clients pay more money. Just be nice. It's like way easier to just be nice. So that's my day. That's my day.
Thank you so much for sharing. And all of you have been so open, but we have been learning. It's so great you talked about that because we have been learning about legal communications. In legal writing, a lot of people jump into memos or briefs or motions. And the reality is, most of our legal writing that we do as legal professionals are emails to opposing counsel or to the court or to the government. And unfortunately, there's not always someone on the receiving end who is willing to be a good, kind, professional person. And so I'm so glad you shared that because we had a big exercise for those who are in my class watching this semester. What happens when you're on the receiving end of just disgusting correspondence? Because oftentimes it does happen. So you heard it here, not first, but second. I mean, that's the harsh reality, but it also sounds like, and another thing that I really want to point out to students is you heard that her paralegals really do, not that attorneys don't do research, but her attorney, her law clerk and paralegal is the one who really is at the front line of a lot of the innovative research. And we talked about that in our class, how important it is for those who want to be paralegals to really get comfortable, right, with research that they can comfortably present to their attorney who's preparing for trial. So thank you for highlighting that and not making me sound like, the scolding mother here. So thank you. Speaking of that topic, a lot of students in the class are a little bit intimidated by technology, legal technology, right? And so day to day, what technology or databases, research or otherwise for organization do you use as a professional or at your workplace that you found helpful? And maybe we'll go the opposite order. We'll go Ms. Pinnock first, Mr. Demetrius, and then Ms. Saunders.
Sure. So my firm, we're a younger firm in that we have, I think the oldest lawyer in my firm is like 45. So we are not afraid of technology, just because sometimes it's a generational thing, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but we welcome it and like it, and we've got a lot of it. It's like overwhelming for people who first come in because we have to build, like I have to bill my time as I'm charging clients. So we have a software for that. We've got that task software that I told you about, Asana. We have sort of like an instant messenger between the firm. And then we have, I don't even know the name of it. It's something that links my email. So if I wanted to like forward an email to the whole firm, but we don't want to send emails in-house, it does that for me. So we've got a lot of stuff that we use. And once you get used to it, it's sort of like, how did I do anything without it? So don't be afraid of it, but it does take time to learn.
And, seconding what she said, I am just old enough to, when I first got my paralegal certificate from George Mason, they taught us the old school way, which was researching in books. And we spent hours, each class session, we would go down to the law library and we would have various assignments and we would have to go scavenge and go find the appropriate book to find the appropriate case law and then it was definitely a daunting task when I first began, but it taught me to appreciate how much technology can help us. And so our case management software has lightened the work exponentially. I think that it's incredibly efficient to track my time. It is LexisNexis and Westlaw.
Mm-hmm.
They have, first of all, where would we store all of the books necessary to research all of the case law necessary or potentially necessary for any particular case? So I understand that technology can oftentimes be incredibly daunting, especially when there are literally limitless options available and you really don't know what software any particular firm or organization is going to use, but they are all based so that they are easy to use. You will be trained. I promise it is not going to be the end all of your career. It will actually be the most helpful thing that you could use.
Thank you for sharing that, because a lot of us in my recent class we learned about shepherdizing, and you mentioned going down to the law library and having to look through what the West Digest or the legal encyclopedias or the case books, and now with your law firm or your employer's subscription to LexisNexis or Westlaw, you have everything at your fingertips. And that's a really great point, that sometimes it's great, but sometimes it can be daunting because it's limitless, right? So just knowing that you will, and this is again an echo of what he's already shared, any employer who's worth their salt will train you. And if they don't, maybe you want to reconsider that in place of employment, but they'll train you on their practices and how they want you to do things. And so you all are really blessed and coming up in a time now where you don't have to necessarily go to your local library to do the research. But thank you for sharing that, because yeah, I remember in law school they were training us in that way, and we were in the middle of the transition phase. I guess they wanted us to do both, and I was like, give me the LexisNexis subscription, I'm good. All right, Ms. Saunders, what technology do you use day to day, legal or organizational, that kind of helps you or would be good for students to kind of get familiar with?
Yeah, first, I would like to say my dog is playing with the loudest toy that exists in the world downstairs.
course.
So if you hear that, I apologize.
Of
It's
course.
convenient. But yeah, so we use at the firm that I work at, we use Clio almost for everything, which is a case management software. So we're able to log our emails into Clio straight from Gmail. We're able to send tasks to each other via Clio. We're just able to have all our matters set up there. It's like just like a one-stop shop for everything that we do. Very, very helpful. Conversely, I grew up just at the point where I basically always use technology
Mm-hmm.
for any
Mm-hmm.
type of research that I did post ninth grade. I had a laptop to do it. Um, so I'm very comfortable with technology, but yeah, Clio is very helpful in my daily organizing my life. I also use this in undergrad as well. I use an organizational software called Notion, which allows me to give myself tasks, make a calendar, all types of stuff. I would recommend to anyone, even while you're still in school, because it's really helpful. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you said it's called Notion?
Yeah, it's notion.so, and it's free to sign up, and it's really nice.
That's fantastic. Part of what we learn in our semester are practical skills for organization as well. I am pretty old school. I have the written organizational planner, but I also utilize, right, for my personal life, G Calendar or Google Calendars, and then for work, of course, our own systems. And so, students, please make sure that you're trying out new things. You heard some of the professionals talk about how they balance professional versus personal, which we'll get to that maybe a little later, but try to start emphasizing and implementing some of those practices, because the reality is that you will be given in this profession a lot of autonomy, but if something goes wrong, it does fall on you. So you want to make sure you know your checks and balances for how you respond to deadlines and what reminders you need. This gets to our next question, because some students are starting to apply for spring 2023 internships. And as you can imagine, it's a little daunting. We're not in a post-COVID society, but a lot of offices are opening up. You're back in person, and this will be some people's first time stepping in a law space. Given your role, what would you look for as for a legal intern who's coming to work with you and under you? What are some of the things or skills that you think are most important? And those can be, trained hard skills or even soft skills, but immediately what comes to your mind. And we'll let Mr. Demetrius go first, and then we'll move around with whoever wants to answer that question.
So we did touch on this earlier, but I think I just cannot emphasize how important communication is to the legal industry. I was very fortunate to come from a customer service background when I first began working in the legal industry. But through all of my educational experience, they, in my opinion, did not emphasize how integral communication was going to be, whether it is between you and a client, you and another attorney, you and a judge. If you are, I'm going to put it this way, if you are attempting to have a conversation with an individual, your communication is the effect of you building a brick wall between you and that individual. And if you are trying to relay that message efficiently, those bricks are not going to help you. And the more bricks that you put up, the less words are going to come through. And I think that going into the legal industry requires somebody to be very aware of the words that they're saying, the words that the other individual is saying, and not only those words, but what is the actual message behind those words. Because it's very easy to hear somebody saying something and respond to what they're saying, but it's difficult to get the message behind their words and respond to that message accurately enough that you're solving their potential problem. And so I think that is one skill that you just cannot stop practicing enough.
I can tell that you work with so many personalities. Because that is an incredible piece of advice, and I hope students really soak that in, especially for those who are going to be starting as interns and who are going to be serving, right? A lot of you all are currently working in retail or in, food service, and that's something to be proud of and something that will serve you. But communication, thank you so much for sharing that. Did anyone else want to answer that question? What skill do you think would be most important at this point?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer just because, was it 2 weekends ago on a Saturday, I interviewed 16 potential law clerks, and it was very interesting.
I have to interrupt you and say that's a very polite way to describe it.
I don't mind you interrupting at all. I work at a 100% family law firm. So we only do family law. We don't do anything else. That's it. And there were students who didn't know that. There were people who had no interest in family. There were people who were like, I want to be a prosecutor, which is cool, but if somebody was like, I'd like to be a prosecutor or a defense attorney, but I think that it would be great for me to do family for these reasons, that's something different. But they were just I think you have to have an interest in the subject matter, at least to some capacity. And I remember when I was in law school, they'd be like, try all these things. And I remember my, whatever that is, advisor or whatever, saying maybe you should try marine law. And I'm like, why? Why would I do that? And so perhaps there's some method to the madness, and maybe you should, but I don't think it comes off well if you're interviewing and you're like, I have no interest in this subject at all. I don't know anything about this subject, but I'm here. Cause what would we even talk about? I don't even know how, we have no common interests. So that's probably something that I can take away from those 16 interviews. And then I also find, I'm going to sound like an old person, but I have to say it. I don't know. A lot of our law clerks don't have much initiative. Okay. And I really struggle with that because it's right? The goal is to be here during the summer or whenever and be hired as an attorney, right? So you want to show that, one, you're interested, and two, you take initiative and you're thinking about the case and you have thoughts and you have ideas. You don't want somebody who you just sort of bark orders to. You want to talk to them about it and get their thoughts about it. And sometimes we've struggled with that in the past because I think we've gotten a few law clerks who, to me, it seemed like no matter how much I included them and stuff, it was it's cool to be here, but maybe not,
Mm.
right? So like I think that stems back to like having interest in it, right? It's hard to be curious about something you just don't care about at all. Um, and I don't take it personally. Like family law is not for everybody, and that's fine. But maybe you should be doing what does interest you. So I think those are my tidbits. I could go on, but I'll stop.
No, this is fantastic. I mean, I really hope students are listening to what the panelists have shared so far because there were practical tools here, right? Interviews are terrifying for even the most confident person, but going into an interview not having known anything about where you're interviewing or the subject matter is just setting yourself up for not just failure, but embarrassment, just a little bit. But more than that, once you get the internship, and I think all of us in this room have been an intern at one point or another, really be enthusiastic about being there. Not to make it hierarchical, you know, some are better than the others, but this is the opportunity that take that opportunity to go to that after work event. If there's a mixer and there's an extra ticket, go with your attorney and do it. If there's a project and you have the capability to do that project, take it on, you know, look for opportunities and projects. And if you feel like you're twiddling your thumbs, then you need to take the steps to see what is it that I can do more of or learn more of. Because while internships are an opportunity for you to kind of build a foundation for your resume, they're equally an opportunity for you to learn what you like and what you don't like, and what you can learn and also network. So really step in and lean into that opportunity because people remember. I know that sounds really scary, but people remember. People are connected in the legal profession, and people, you'll need a recommendation. And even if the internship isn't what you imagine it to be, you always just at least want to walk away with a recommendation, at the very least. So just adding on there. Ms. Saunders, did you have anything to add on there? I know you are a recent grad and you're in as a legal assistant and you've done internships before. What would you suggest for someone who's looking to start spring 2023?
Yeah, well, I agree with what Miss Pinnock was saying earlier. I think like if you're like showing that you have a passion for something gets you a really, really far, like long way. Even me just getting this job that I have now with no experience, I think probably what got me the job was just showing that no, I've never done any work in family law, but I have a passion for helping people when they're in a difficult time of their lives. And that really helped maybe set me apart from other people who are interviewing at the time. I
Mm-hmm.
also think being adaptable is just really important. No matter what you're doing, it's just a lot easier, I find, to work with people who are able to kind of move past small, little, what's the word I'm looking for? Like inconveniences. And like look past it, keep going. Yeah, that happened, but we're just gonna pretend like that didn't happen and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Or we're gonna learn
Mm-hmm.
from that and keep going. But adaptability is really important. I've realized as I started working as a legal assistant, having to just jump from one project to a next, not necessarily knowing what you're gonna do at 2 p.m. when it's 9 in the morning, and just kind of being okay with that is really, really, really important.
Yes, and you're excellent at that. Students, I will say that flexibility is not my strongest skill. It just isn't. And adaptability, but it's something that I've had to, when you hear everybody's day here, everyone said there's not a typical day. And that's true if you decide to do family law, business, government compliance, or if you decide today you want to work in entertainment law. Whatever area of law you work in, it's rare that you'll come in and that whatever day you planned will be the day that you executed. I try my best, but that's really what happens. And so adaptability is something that's really important. So I heard communication and that art and honing in on that. I've also heard just being learned and knowledgeable about what you're entering, and prepared and enthusiastic. And then, of course, adaptability. So take those things in, students. I know you all are submitting your spring 2023 applications and all these different areas of law and policy. So this question would be, again, another open-ended question for those who feel comfortable answering. A lot of students in this class are interested in getting further education. They're getting their undergraduate degree. Maybe they want their master's, or they want their certification, like Mr. Demetrius, in paralegal studies, or they want their law degree. And so it's a compound question. Ms. Peanut, please do not object. The question is, do you have student debt? And if so, do you believe that the debt is or was worth it? And I know that's a heavy question. It's very personal. So I will not throw this at anyone who doesn't want to answer, but does anyone feel comfortable? I can start. Professor Gore does, and Professor Gore absolutely feels like it's worth it. I do think that you do want to think responsibly about the debt that you incur. Any financial decision, you need to sit with a financial planner, look at your expenses and look at the commitments to the financial obligation. But for me personally, it was worth it. And I can go on and on and on as to why, but we have panelists here. So does anyone comfortable and or want to answer?
Sure, I can go first.
Oh, good.
I definitely do. As you know, I got my paralegal certificate, I got my bachelor's, and now my master's. And I think that it is in an effort to further my prospects, I took this on. I definitely did not need frankly, I don't think that I needed any of them, but I really wanted to show my dedication, my commitment, my skills, my knowledge. I wanted to be able to exemplify that in a way that employers would be receptive of. And I really wanted to entrench myself in the legal industry. And I did that through education. And I am so glad that I did, because I learned invaluable skills that, frankly, I wouldn't have learned otherwise. I believe myself to be incredibly marketable in an area where marketability, networking, and job prospects are at an all-time high. And I don't think a lot of that would have been possible if I didn't dedicate a lot of my time to my education.
You are absolutely right. When I look at the job market right now, and when I look at what employers want for law clerks and paralegals, I mean, I know you're probably the top of the crop because of your educational background.
I don't know about that.
Please, your expertise, but the education makes, and this is true for most of academia, it just broadens, right, your options, and also gives you leveraging power when it comes to salary. So that's that. Thank you for sharing that, because that was very intuitive for students who are saying, should I take that plunge, right, if I can't, qualify for a scholarship or some Pell Grant, what happens here? And I think one more person, did anyone else want to answer that question?
I'm happy to, but if you have other stuff, you can move on.
No. I want to hear it, because I know a lot of people are also interested in being attorneys.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very personal decision. I don't regret it at all, but that's because I love family law, and I went to school for family law, and I do family law. But I know a lot of people who don't like the jobs that they're in and what they're doing, and now they're saddled down with debt, but they have to keep doing this job because they have to pay off that debt. So I think you have to think really long and hard about what that's going to look like if you do have to take out loans, what you can manage, like do real research about what the job that you're going to get after law school will pay. And it's hard to say this because like I when I was in law school, I didn't know anybody that I could talk to about their loans, right? So it's like, if you know somebody, talk to them. But I know a lot of people will say like, okay, well, my plan is to take out the loans. I'll go work at Big Law. I'll earn, a bucket of money right away. Usually they start at like 160 to 180, right? I'll do that for a few years, pay off my loans, and then be done. I know several people who had that plan, and that is not how it went. So also just like think about those types of things. I have no regrets, but I do know that I do know people who are really close to me who I don't know if they would actually do something different if they could, but they say it. So.
Hmm. And that's real, right? I really appreciate again the authenticity here because a lot of people don't have people that they can go to and say, I mean, they see the debt, and I mean, most of our colleagues are comfortable, right, with the fact that they have some amount of student debt. It's a common thing, but for a lot of
I
people, it's a
don't know
scary
many
thing.
people who don't. So,
Hmm.
not to cut you off, but like most of the lawyers that I know still are paying off their student loan debt. But it's like you have to decide what's right for you. My life is pretty comfortable, so I'm all right.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. So there was some really good advice from both of those panelists about it being a personal decision. But if you're looking to continue your education, think about the why. Always think about your why. Mr. Demetrius here shared about his leveraging power, going to the full extent, right, of his capabilities without being limited. And then you heard Ms. Pinnock talk more about how it's a lifestyle decision and it's a life decision, but it's personal. No one can tell you whether it's the right or wrong decision, but do your research. So that's very important. Okay, the next question is a little bit more about life, right? Some students have noticed in movies and television shows for law, it is glorified for people to sleep at the office. Look, Miss Pinnock is like shaking her head fervently. In shows like Suits or in movies, right? Attorneys are at the office until 1 a.m. Law clerks are, studying their lives away, and then legal assistants are being screamed at and they're running across the city in heels, right? That is what we see glorified. And so students wonder, a lot of students in this class have families or they have dogs, let's be honest, or, this is their second career. This is their newfound career. And so they don't have the luxury of having the law be their life. And so for you all, how do you feel like, not to be a therapist, but do you feel there's a balance, right, that you've been able to create between your job and your life? And if so, is what you see in the media often true for your personal life? I'm going to let Miss Peanut go first because her reaction was so visceral. We'll do Miss Saunders and then Mr. Demetrius.
I have a lot to say about all of what you said. So first, what I would say. So look, I will even get personal. I had a boyfriend several years ago who was not a lawyer, and we would watch Suits, and he'd be like, "Why don't you just do that?" And I'm like, "Because it's TV, and that's not real, and I can't just like show up at a judge's house at the middle of the night and like make him sign this. Like it is so like Suits is a great show. I love Suits. I love Meghan Markle. I loved Harvey Specter. I love the whole romantic relationship, but it is 100% fiction. Like you cannot, even with an emergency motion, you cannot be like, I'm going to draft this right now and then be in court arguing it in 10 minutes. Like it just doesn't, none of it makes it doesn't work like that.
No.
Not that part of it. And when I was a law clerk for a judge, and my judge only did family law, and people would come in and start like the screaming, and my judge is like, Judge Judy is fake. That is not real life. You cannot do that here. There are rules. Like you have to behave in an appropriate way. Like, no, I don't know where that stuff came from, but like, no. No. Even the shows that are like pretty accurate still have a level of like drama that, I mean, I do family. I don't have anything sexy like murders and stuff. So perhaps it's like that in that world, but in my world, it is not at all like that. And then the other thing about the yelling is something that I actually feel really strongly about. It is, you are going to come across people who treat everybody in the firm like that, and you have to decide, like, is that a place where you want to be? It is, again, I don't understand why it's so hard to be just like a normal, cordial human being, but a lot of people are not. I think as we continue to progress and new lawyers are coming in, we're getting less and less of that, but they're still there. we could talk about this for, like, you should start it with this, Courtney. We could have talked about this for so long. Like, I think you just have to decide, like, when you, if you're going to a private practice law firm, try your hardest to talk to somebody who works there, because a lot of the times you're not going to know if you're going to be yelled at, screamed at, asked to pick up lunch and do car service until you're there. And just decide if that's the kind of life you want. I'll leave that there. I am at a firm where I have work-life balance,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't say that for everybody that I know.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for answering that question so, again, candidly, because, again, a lot of students, I mean, who leave the class are approached, right, by solo practitioners, boutique law firms, government entities, and nonprofits. You don't know what the culture will be if you don't have a fellow alum or a friend or an advisor who has worked there before and can speak on that behalf. So consider those things, students, because it is really important. Ms. Saunders, the question, because Ms. Pinnock answered it from the top to the bottom here, but the question too, again, is, you know, again, there's a lot represented in the media of how working in a law space is for those who are assistants, law clerks, and attorneys. In your world, right, is that been your experience, and do you feel like you have a work-life balance?
So first, I don't feel like that has been my experience. Of course, I wouldn't have never known during my interview if I was going into a firm where the culture was um, maybe less treating each other like, humans rather than like work robots with no emotions and feelings. But all I knew is that I could try my hardest. The only thing I could control was to try my hardest to interview back. So, and looking at those key terms on their website or on the job application, and trying to see how in the interview the people who are interviewing me were communicating with each other, and like just trying to read all the subtext throughout the interview process to make sure that I was coming to a place that I could feel good about going to every single day, because like I'm spending I'm spending 9 to 5 here, Monday through Friday. So it's really important to me to like know my values as I'm working, and not to feel like I'm tethered to any, like I'm not being forced to work here. If I'm somewhere that goes against my values, that makes me feel belittled, then I'm gonna have to see my way out. So I guess it's like, that's not my experience at other places. Perhaps legal assistants are treated maybe more like, go get me coffee, go, do this, go do that. But I know that that's my standard for where I'm working and what I'm doing is above that. So I would see my way out if I were in that situation. I definitely feel like I have a great work life balance. I primarily work 9 to 5. If there's a trial, I might work a little bit longer. Or if I like messed up during the day, then I might work a little bit longer. It's usually my fault. That I'm working a little bit late. Um, but yeah, and I think for me, something that's helpful is having like a physical workspace. I think there's good things about remote work, but for me, I like having that literal physical boundary of like, this is where I work. This is where I do life outside of work. And it makes it easier for me to separate what I do from 9 to 5 and what I do from 5 to 9. Um, Also, I try to, find things that make me feel like, okay, this is my life outside of work. Like I'm not always thinking about work because I have hobbies and interests and things. I'm hanging out with my friends, my family, playing with my dog, stuff like that. Um, because yeah, you can't, you can't. That's all.
I really like what you said about interviewing back. I think that is incredibly important. While we can be, when we're looking for employers, we can be so focused on getting the job and performing for the employer that we forget we're trying to see if this fits our life too, right? And so for students who are entering the legal profession, some of you, you've been in professions before, but not the legal profession. You know that it is important that you understand whether this fits your life, your day to day, because that it's imperative, right? So That's really great advice, Ms. Saunders. Mr. Demetrius, do you need me to repeat the question, or are you're
No, you're
you're good
good.
to go?
Yes.
Okay.
So I just cannot emphasize what both of the other panelists have said. I have unfortunately, and I think I've told Professor Gore this before, but I am a self-proclaimed workaholic as a result of living in the DMV area. And I have unfortunately, for a long period of my career, allowed myself to turn into a machine. And I felt that it was in the best interest of my future that I did whatever was necessary to make sure all work was done all the time. And I got to a point where I realized that was really destructive. And it was not going to be beneficial for me or the organization in the long run. Because if I break down, then the organization doesn't have me anymore. So I have learned recently that you must do what is best for your health. And I say this to say that there is a job out there for everyone. If you are a working individual or if you have a family, there will be positions for you where you can work 9 to 5, and that's all that you will work. If you're an individual who wants to commit yourself to your job and you are okay with working more than 9 to 5, and you want something that's going to be challenging and really get you into the dirt, to say, there will be positions for you like that. And it is all about knowing your expectations for yourself, your values. Like Ms. Saunders said, you go into it knowing yourself first and what you're looking for out of a job, not just will they hire me, but will I fit in here? Will this help me personally? And you will find something that is good for you. Right now, I believe that I have a much better work-life balance. Like we heard earlier, I'm involved in organizations outside of work. Frankly, I wouldn't have been able to get my master's degree had I remained in the position where I was working well over 60 hours a week. And if I had not learned that I had to put myself first, my career would not have lasted.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. So you got your master's while you were working, is that right?
That's correct.
Wow. Then you make some excellent points. Again, everyone did. Your points where you really have to think about what's important to you, right? Because for some students in this class, they're like, listen, professor, I'm about this money. I'm here to work as hard as I can and make as much as I can. I'm ready, right, to sleep at the office. And if that's your priority, great. But like Mr. Demetrius shared, your priorities might shift 2, 3, 4, 5 years into it, and you might find that you prioritize, personal time or time with family that feels guiltless. All of us enjoyed a Thanksgiving holiday, and for some people they didn't, right? They might have enjoyed Thanksgiving dinner and got back to it. So it depends on what you prioritize in the moment. We're coming up on time, so I do just have I would say 2 questions. So just to respect the panelists' time, I'm going to make and ask that everyone keep it fairly brief. But these are questions that are kind of cruelly entered because they're not necessarily quick answer questions. So I want to apologize already in advance. But one question that was really on a lot of students' mind was, why did you choose this career path, right? Is there something in what you do, whether it be the area of law, the title, the location, why is it that you said, I am going to work in this industry? And if you could share just a little bit about purpose, because that is what keeps people right in any job. And it's okay if you get on this and say, professor, money, duh. But if there's another purpose that kind of holds you and tethers you to this, what would it be?
I'll respond. So my undergraduate degree is in social work, and I started off doing that. And as you're about to graduate, they make you do like on the ground, like clinical work. And I was in So I'm from Baltimore. So I was there and I was just like, it was just too hard. I was working with children who I wanted to like save and adopt at like, what are you, like 22 years old or however that it was just really hard, like emotionally on me. And I was like, well, I can help them if I like fix legislation that's making this so terrible for them. And so that's how I decided to go to law school. So my goal was always to do family law. I always knew I was going to be working with children and families in some capacity. I thought it was going to be child welfare, and it turns out that it's a lot less of that now, but that has just always been my focus. I like families and family dynamics. I again, family law is not for everybody. It takes a really certain kind of person, because like I'm not going through a divorce, right? And that's why there are other people who are so nasty, other opposing counsels. Like, I don't have any beef with you, so I don't know why you're speaking to me like that. And it takes a certain kind of person to be able to like push that aside and just do your job. Um, and so I think that's a long way of saying like it just works for me. Like, this is what I'm good at and should be doing. The clients like me so far, so like I think there are other areas of law that I just would not do well with. Um and yeah, like, after a case is over and somebody sends you an email, it's like, I've had the most peaceful night of my life now that you helped me. Like, that's all that it takes. So
There's nothing more satisfying than seeing the manifestation of your work sometimes. And when it's so personal, right, for someone, it's really helpful. And there are students who are watching this who have worked in social justice or welfare for children, causes. And that's something for you to consider, right? Maybe it is that your career path is in family law. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go to Mr. Demetrius and then Ms. Saunders. So the question again is, why have you chosen this particular career path?
You could unpack I'm going to make this very brief, but you could unpack this in a million different ways. I am an individual who has recognized that there have been so many injustices in our country, across the world, frankly. And the human collaboration system is just so complex. There will always be problems. And so many people that I know, that I've grown up with, that I have interacted with throughout my life, go on and just have to deal with these problems because they just have no other means. And it pains me to know that people have to go without help. And I wanted to be a voice in whatever capacity that I could to help people, because it is just, I feel it's so unjust that there are individuals that knowingly take advantage of others just because of a person's position. And I wanted to be somebody who could be a voice and advocate on behalf of others. And if I could just brighten one person's life, that would make the entire difference.
That is absolutely beautiful and so admirable. I mean, it's incredible, right? That's your purpose. And we could go even deeper because I know there's another layer to that philosophy, but I thank you for sharing that. It's so refreshing to hear. In respect of time, Ms. Saunders, I'm going to ask you and move on, even though I want to tap more into that. Ms. Saunders, why this area, why this career path, especially for someone who just recently graduated? What made you say, okay, I'm going to lean into this type of work?
Yeah, so I graduated with a degree in communications and social influence and sociology. A lot of the people in those degrees went into nonprofit work, and I had an internship where I worked at a nonprofit, and I found that it was not for me. The basis of a nonprofit is making change, helping others. That's like exactly what I want to do, but working inside of the nonprofit, sometimes the internship tells you what you don't want to do, which is incredibly valuable. And so I kind of made a hard pivot and I was thinking, I like sat with myself, what am I interested in? Like what drives me, what moves me, what motivates me? As you mentioned in my bio, I am very interested in rhetoric and language and the power of words and making like just changing the world. But I'm also interested in making social change and like what I'm doing having a broader impact and being able to change people's lives. And so I kind of had a moment like Miss Pinnock where I was like, oh, well, maybe I can do that through law and policy. And like I currently work at a family law firm. Do I know that that's where I'm going to stay forever? No, I have no clue. But I think that it's nice that I get to see the way that law can help people on a micro scale, and I can look in the future at seeing the way that it can help on a macro as well. But it just helping people is what drives me. So I think that's what kind of got me here.
Thank you for sharing that. And as students, I hope you also glean from that as well. You know, you don't necessarily have to know that this is going to be it for me forever. In fact, you might know the area of law you want to work in and realize that where you work isn't where you want to be forever. Or you might find the perfect place and the perfect industry or area of law, and you might want to move to another state or city. And so just be open to that. But know your why. That's going to be really important as you start to discover this career. And so we're at time. I want to thank our panelists. We have so many other questions that people want to ask, but if students have questions and want to reach out to panelists, I ask that you email me directly. My email address for students who are not in my class is courtney.gore@udc.edu. Courtney is spelled Courtnie. I'll spell out the whole thing again, courtnie.gore@udc.edu. Again, many thanks to our esteemed panelists for being so candid, for sharing great advice and guidance about their journeys, both in education and also vocationally, and also giving people that hard but practical advice about what to expect and how to navigate spring 2023 and beyond in their internships. I want to thank each of you. And I want to thank everyone who tuned in today. All right. You all have a great evening.